Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack one of the absolute most fascinating texts in modern finance, Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money. We are taking a pretty paradigm-shifting journey today into a really bizarre paradox. Have you ever wondered why incredibly smart, highly educated people sometimes go completely spectacularly broke, while ordinary folks with literally zero financial background end up building these massive empires of wealth? Well, it turns out, pretty much everything you think you know about getting rich might be fundamentally backward. Let's get into it.
To really wrap our heads around this, let's kick things off with a massive paradox, looking at two very real guys. First up, we have Ronald Read. Ronald fixed cars at a gas station for 25 years, swept floors at JCPenney, bought a tiny two-bedroom house at age 38, and just lived there his whole life. Well, when he died in 2014, it came out that he had a net worth of over $8 million. Crazy, right? Then contrast him with Richard Fuscone. This guy was a Harvard-educated Merrill Lynch executive. He was so successful he retired in his 40s to a Greenwich mansion that cost $90,000 a month just to maintain. But when the 2008 financial crisis hit, Fuscone went completely bankrupt. Ronald Read left an absolute fortune to charity, and Richard Fuscone's home was sold off in a foreclosure auction.
Seriously, I want you to stop and think about this for a second. How on earth is this even possible? Think about it. In what other field does someone with absolutely no college degree, no formal training, and zero industry connections just massively outperform someone with the absolute best education and experience money can buy? I mean, you would never see a rural janitor outperforming a Harvard-trained heart surgeon, right? Or designing a skyscraper better than a top-tier architect. No way. Yet in finance, this exact scenario actually happened.
Okay, so what's the secret? The answer is the core thesis of our explainer today. Financial success is not a hard science. It's just not. It isn't about complex math or having this off-the-charts IQ. Doing well with money is actually a soft skill, and it's called the psychology of money. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that how you behave with your money is vastly more important than what you know about spreadsheets or stock valuations or interest rates.
So let's look at Section 1, the janitor and the genius. Basically, why behavior is greater than intelligence.
We just saw how a humble janitor crushed it through sheer patience. Now let's look at how a so-called genius completely unraveled. The source material shares this jaw-dropping anecdote about a wildly successful tech executive. This guy was undoubtedly brilliant. He designed a key component for Wi-Fi routers in his 20s, made an absolute fortune. But his relationship with money was, well, totally unhinged. One day, he gave a colleague a stack of cash to buy a bunch of $1,000 gold coins. Then, he and his buddies went down to the Pacific Ocean and literally proceeded to skip the gold coins into the sea like rocks. Just for fun, laughing the whole time. A few days later, he shattered a $500 lamp at a hotel, pulled out a brick of cash, handed the manager $5,000, and basically told him to get out of his face. I mean, it's probably no surprise to hear that this brilliant executive eventually went completely broke, because emotional immaturity will completely obliterate financial genius every single time.
Moving on to Section 2. Why no one is crazy. It's all about different perspectives. You know, it's super easy to look at gold coin skippers or folks buried under a mountain of credit card debt and just label them as crazy. But the reality is way more complex. Why do people see money so differently? Well, we're all raised in different economies, with different parents, living through entirely different job markets. So it seems totally insane to you might make perfect sense to someone else based on what they've lived through. Take lottery tickets, for instance. The lowest income households spend over $400 a year on them. And these are often the exact same people who couldn't afford a $400 emergency if their car broke down. To a wealthy person, that sounds crazy. But to a low-income worker, they aren't buying a financial asset. They are buying the only tangible dream available to them, of getting the kind of life that wealthy people already enjoy. Every financial decision a person makes checks the specific boxes they feel they need to check in that exact moment.
And this really hits the nail on the head when you look at how external forces shape our views. Notice the incredibly stark difference in stock market returns during those highly impressionable teenage and young adult years for two different generations. If you were born in 1970, the stock market grew nearly tenfold during your teens and 20s. It literally looked like a magic wealth-generating machine. But if you were born in 1950, the market was entirely flat. It went nowhere during your youth. These two groups go through their entire lives with completely different default settings on taking financial risk, simply based on the dumb luck of what year they happened to be born.
We see the exact same thing play out with inflation. If you were born in the 1960s, you remember your paychecks buying less and less and sitting in massive gas lines as prices just tripled. You carried deep emotional scars from inflation. But if you were born in 1990, inflation has been virtually non-existent for most of your adult life. You barely even think about it.
You can't just read about this stuff in a textbook or a spreadsheet and truly get it. You have to experience it.
Okay, now this is where it gets really mind-blowing. These timelines reveal exactly why we all make so many mistakes. Money has been around for thousands of years, right? But modern financial concepts are basically infants. The 401k wasn't even invented until 1978. The Roth IRA, created in 1998. The whole idea that you, individually, are solely responsible for funding a 30-year retirement is barely 2 generations old. Before World War II, most people just worked until they died. So look, if you feel like you're bad at saving and investing, cut yourself some slack. It's because society as a whole is collectively winging it. We are all essentially just newbies trying to navigate a system that is brand new to human history.
Which brings us to Section 3, Luck and Risk, 2 sides of a coin.
Think of luck and risk as siblings. They are the brutal reality that every single outcome in life is guided by forces outside your individual effort. Just look at the story of Bill Gates. In 1968, there were roughly 303 million high school-age kids in the world. Only about 300 of them attended Lakeside School in Seattle, which was literally the only high school in the entire world that had a computer advanced enough to do time-sharing. That is 1 in a million luck. Gates himself openly admits there would be no Microsoft without Lakeside. But then there is Kent Evans. Kent was Gates' best friend and arguably his smartest classmate. They actually schemed to build a company together. But tragically, Kent died in a mountaineering accident while still in high school. The odds of that? Also roughly 1 in a million. It's the exact same immense force, just working in opposite directions.
Bill Gates actually summed it up perfectly when he said, "Success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose." I'll let that sink in for a second. When we judge our own success, it's so incredibly easy to ignore the role that luck played. And when we judge other people, it's just as easy to assume their failure was due to laziness or bad choices, totally ignoring the brutal reality of risk. Basically, nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems.
So the really tricky part here is how incredibly difficult it is to separate true skill from blind luck. Take Cornelius Vanderbilt. He famously expanded his massive railroad empire by just blatantly ignoring laws that didn't accommodate him. He literally used to say, "What do I care about the law? And I got the power?" Today, he's celebrated as this massive business visionary. But honestly, how thin is the line between Vanderbilt's celebrated rule-breaking and the disastrous corporate crimes of a company like Enron? We praise one for being bold because they got lucky, and we throw the other in jail because they landed on the wrong side of risk. We've got to be super careful about who we praise and who we try to copy.
And that leads us into our final stretch. Section 4, Never Enough, the danger of greed.
Look, if you don't recognize the massive roles of luck and risk, you will never ever know when to stop pushing your chips to the center of the table. Take the phenomenal rise of Rajat Gupta. This is a guy who was orphaned as a teenager in the slums of Kolkata. From absolutely nothing, he climbed all the way up to become the CEO of McKinsey, the world's most prestigious consulting firm. He partnered with Bill Gates on philanthropy. He sat on the board of Goldman Sachs. By 2008, he had a staggering net worth of $100 million. Actually, think about that. A 5% return on that generates almost $600 an hour, 24 hours a day, forever. He had won the game, the absolute pinnacle of success.
But he had a tragic, fatal flaw. $100 million just wasn't enough for him. He wanted the B. He wanted to be a billionaire. During the 2008 financial crisis, while sitting on that Goldman Sachs board, Gupta learned in secret that Warren Buffett was about to bail out the bank. Before the public even knew, Gupta used this insider information to help a hedge fund make a quick $17 million in illegal profits. He threw away a lifetime of impossible, astronomical success and eventually went to federal prison for money he literally did not need, simply because he had zero sense of enough. Now, contrast Gupta's insatiable greed with this awesome little story. The famous novelists Kurt Vonnegut and Joseph Heller were at a party hosted by a billionaire hedge fund manager. Vonnegut pointed out to Heller that this billionaire made more money in a single day than Heller had earned from his wildly famous novel, Catch-22, over its entire history. Heller simply responded, "Yes, but I have something he will never have. Enough."
And you know what? That right there is the ultimate lesson of the psychology of money. The absolute hardest financial skill to master is getting the goalpost to stop moving. If you don't master your own behavior, I promise you, no amount of technical knowledge or math is going to save you. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to take away from our explainer today. As you look at your own life, your own bank account, and your own ambitions, what is your definition of enough?